Basically, all we do is we come in from the other end of the rotation. We'll close this gate off for the sheep, and then we'll just drive straight down here. Once we drive down here, they're gonna all run to the gate. Just watch, they'll be coming any second. Essentially how our rotational grazing program works is we shut the gate like we talked about of the new paddock that they're going to go to. We leave the gate open between the paddock that they're going to, or they're in now that we've moved them to, and the one that they were previously in. We come over here, sometimes we do it by hand, that's why this has wheels on it. This is their mineral trough. We'll put a mineral mixture in there from Premier One that you're going to see here shortly. We'll disconnect the water trough with the automatic water, turn the T off, and we'll take that down to the other end. So you would think that we're going to take this water trough. We're actually not. We're going to take that water trough, so we're not going to move it right this instant. Right now we're all just going to take their mineral trough down there. The horses are going to come into this pasture, and then we're going to go up in the drone and we're going to see a little bit more about how this rotational grazing process works and why it's so beneficial. Welcome to a bird's eye view of the pastures. So I'm showing you this angle because it'll depict a little bit better on how well these pastures are recovering from being grazed. And they're not being grazed intensely, like I know some people eat them all the way down. You just can't do that with sheep because of the parasite issues. However, I'm pretty sure by looking at it you can tell that on the far left, those are pastures. So actually the far left pasture is the one that the horses are in right now. They're about to come out and go to the one that the side-by-side's in. But that far left pasture was grazed 5 days with 160 sheep on it, and then now it's just getting done with 5 days of 2 horses being on it. The pasture that has the side-by-side in it, that one has 5 days of sheep grazing, but has 0 days of horse grazing yet. And then obviously the one that the sheep are in, they just moved in there, so it has like 10 minutes of sheep grazing on it, and no horses obviously as well. The one on the far right of your screen, that one has 0 days of anything grazing it since it was grazed last, which was almost 2 months ago. The one the sheep are in right now has had a 2-month rest before the sheep came back to it. Now you're going to see what the pastures look like in springtime. Now it's not the exact same angle. I do wish it was, and I'm sorry that it's not. However, you can see that the grasses are luscious and green. This is with a 4-month break. So from December 15th until March 15th, our sheep are in the barn. And then when they start the rotational grazing practice, again at March 15th, they still don't make it to these pastures until about a month later. This will show you, though, that those pastures look the exact same as they do. The only difference is that the weeds are not there. They're not present because the grasses and everything has not been warm enough, or the weather has not been warm enough for them to come up. Videos you see before you now are just side-by-side comparisons of early April 2022 and late September 2022. Now the big differences are going to be that obviously spring everything's green because our grasses are primarily fescue. And fescue is a cool season grass, so it grows really well when the ground temperatures are around 55 degrees and there's rain, which obviously spring is pretty good for both of those things. However, in the top right, that one is depicting still what we can look like even after going for almost 3 weeks without rain. Now we're not in a drought. We have had rain throughout the summer, but during this specific time, we haven't had rain in almost 3 weeks now. It actually might be over 3 weeks, but still, you can see that there's a lot of green there. And I'm not saying that rotational grazing is the only way to have that, but what I am saying is that 3 weeks is a long time to go without rain. Even in the summer, it's still a good amount of time to go without rain. Those sheep will not come back to a pasture for 2 months. So the chances of having rain within 2 months are pretty good. You can see that there's actually still quite a bit of grass in here. However, this it might be closer to 5 or 6 inches of grass, but this grass that you're seeing here, we don't want them to eat below 4 inches. And the reason being is because the parasites that are harmful to sheep live in those bottom 4 inches of grass. So that's why we don't want them to eat down that low. The reason we rotate every 5 days is the parasites that they have, or that they pick up, or can pick up, they hatch after 6 days. So essentially, like right now, they just went into this paddock, right? So in 6 days from now, whatever parasites that they did have in their intestines that are putting larvae out in their manure are hatching. And at 6 days, they're going to start crawling up those blades of grass, and they're trying to get ingested to find their host. We want to break that cycle. So how we do that is we move them at 5 days so they don't get a chance to pick up a host. By the time they come back to this pasture, it will be 2 months later. And as you may imagine, in the summertime, it really breaks that cycle pretty quick. Mainly because those parasites will dry up. It's typically dry in the summer. Heat and dry is what kind of kills those parasites off relatively quick. Cool and moist, even if it's really cold like wintertime, you would think it would freeze them and kill them. Not always. It actually will not necessarily kill them, and it'll still allow them to pick down and eat and pick them up. Everybody happy with the new home? This area right here is very green, lush grass, and actually the only reason this is flattened like that is because we had to bring a roller through here to do some dirt work and repair some stuff down there. Anyhow, this is actually really nice, luscious grass, and it's like that because they spend a lot of their time over here. Their water trough is in this corner, and then that mineral trough that you've seen us toting around, that is over in this area as well. We try to keep it near the water. You've seen, I think you'll be able to tell anyways on camera, you can kind of see that the grass is pretty good here too, and that's because we've been moving their mineral trough further down along this fence line. What we want to do now is we're going to start bringing it out this way a little more. Why does it matter where that mineral trough is at? I'll tell you why. More popular places that they go and hang out, that is where their manure is going to end up at. Their manure is what makes this grass grow much better than what it did. And as silly as this may sound, that's actually why we hate having trees in a pasture, because they'll want to hang out under those trees. It's great that they're in the shade and they're protected from the weather, but it's also terrible because if there's only, say, this one's a really good example. There's only 2 trees in this pasture, and they're actually on the other side in that far fence line, and that is where they like to hang out. A bit of a downside because the simple fact that their water is up here, their minerals are up here, and all their manure just mostly, predominantly, is up there. By the way, remember how we talked about in the wintertime the parasites kind of thrive and they'll actually hang out and stick around longer? It's actually why we don't have our sheep on pasture in the winter. For 3 months of the year, December 15th tentatively through March 15th tentatively, is when they actually stay in that barn that my wife and I built. That livestock barn gives a lot of benefit to us as well. Not only does it help, again, kind of curb the parasites, but it also allows us all the hay that we make off of that hay field over there. You can kind of see because it's not cut. All that hay is actually used in that barn. And the beauty of that is that whatever residue that they may have from the feeders gets spread back on the hay field. Obviously their manure is going to get spread back on the hay field. And their bedding, which is oak sawdust, all gets spread back on the hayfield. And all their sawdust is really fine particle sawdust, so it breaks down pretty quick. Helps bring nutrients to our pasture along with their manure, and then obviously the residue from the hay breaking back down and going back into that hayfield. In front of the trough, put wheels on the back, right? So we actually have this ratchet strap that we leave connected there permanently. And all we do is we hook it up to that, or if we're not going to hook it up to that, we'll simply come over here and use the hook itself as our handle to carry it wherever we want to go. Well, you can tell it's fall because these spider webs are everywhere. Remember how we talked about Premier One minerals? That's what we're using. So the salt is actually I think you'll be able to see that pretty well. So the salt in here is actually from a local farm store. Premier One does not sell the mineral salt by itself. So this, I know right now it's mixed, but this is literally pure salt that we buy from that farm store. Now, inside of here, you're going to see all these different minerals that are mixed in. And all those minerals are mixed in there because they're needed. There's selenium, vitamin A, D, and E, and iodine. Premier One sells all those packets. You can get them. And then instead of those molasses tubs or anything like that, we put these out. And the reason we put these out like this loose mineral, is because when they need the actual minerals that are in here and not just want to eat molasses because it tastes good or because it's sweet or anything like that, that they do with all that molasses stuff. So you may ask, why do we use a loose mineral like this? Well, it's actually pretty simple. We actually tried the mineral tubs. Unfortunately, they do not work well for us because our flock will eat that whole thing. So a 250-pound molasses tub with the actual sheep minerals, not cattle, but the ones for sheep, they will eat that whole thing gone in about 3 days. And that was when we only had 50 of them. We're at about 160 now. So we went to a different method because we saw other people talking about that, saying that, hey, I can't get them to stop eating it, and it's a big tub, 250 pounds. It's cheaper to buy the 250-pound tub per pound than it is the smaller ones. So we all buy the bigger ones. The problem is that it's not simple to move. It's not as easy just to, bring it into the pasture, leave it in there for a few hours or, in the evening or something like that, and then take it out. It does two things. It makes it to where they don't have access to minerals anytime that they may need them. And it also makes it a very inconvenient, heavy chore that has to be done every day pretty much. So this is out here every day, all day. The only time that it's not available to them is, let's say that it's going to rain tomorrow and the next day. And not like just a little bit of rain, like, might rain. Like, it's scheduled to have a lot of rain. We actually won't fill this up. So this is a full week's worth because as of right now, the forecast looks very dry. If for some reason it ends up raining, not the end of the world. We can come out here and it'll kind of get, it'll get like this. It'll be, yeah, it'll be hard. We can come out here and break it up. That's not a big deal, but we do try to avoid the rain with it. Those minerals that are mixed in there, though, are what they actually need, and the molasses is the reason that they eat those molasses tubs, because it tastes good, just like us. If you give us the option of something that's good for us, like salad, for instance, but then you give us the option of salad with dressing, we're going to eat the salad with dressing, and we're going to eat more of it because the dressing makes it taste better, even though realistically we only need the nutrients from the salad. Hard to believe that that dog is going to be 14 years old in February and still comes out here and runs around with me. I know, I was just telling him that you're 14 almost. And you're so excited, aren't you? So can everything be positive about rotational grazing? Kinda, but there are some drawbacks. It does require more land. I'd say that's a drawback. The drawbacks to rotational grazing, we actually touched on that in a video previously as well. There's one that breaks down the cost of confinement in the barn over there, where they're at for 3 months of the year. And then we have another video that breaks down the cost of pasturing, in our case, rotational grazing. Pretty informative video. If you haven't seen it, I'll link it right here, and I'll link the cost of confinement. It might be reverse, but they'll both be linked in this video right about now. So if you're interested in that, go check it out at the end of the video too. I have no complaints about it. I am actually thrilled about the whole process. It sucked putting all the fence up. It sucked putting all the water lines in. You know, that stuff kind of sucked. But now every 5 days I just come out and move them. And even the days between that we come out to check on them, it's super simple. We'll walk through the gates. That's the only thing that we really haven't finished out of this whole project. So these are just panels that we use as gates right now, but we actually are making real gates. And the reason we're making real gates is because it's simpler. Those are kind of a pain to drag open. Not like impossible to open by any means, but they are a bit cumbersome. And the other thing is that we do have horses over there. They're coming. The downside to the horses and these panels are this. They like to put their hoofs on them and push on them. And not so much they, as it's Red. He's a character. He's not a bad horse. He just, you know, has some behaviors that we don't like, but they are kind of cute sometimes. But then when he tears things up, then they're not cute. Since I can forecast this question being asked already, rotational grazing with multiple species. Yeah, we kind of do it, but not to its full capacity. So, like I said before, we're going to grow to 350 sheep. That is going to be our end state goal. That's how many will stay and be maintained on this farm. That'll be our breeding stock. And then plus the rams that go with them as well. So it'll be roughly about 25 or 30 rams. With that, they do really well, and they're going to have plenty of food in their 5-acre paddock without an issue. Where it is nice is that the sheep will eat weeds first. Obviously the horses are not necessarily fond of weeds, and cattle aren't fond of weeds either. They really prefer grasses. We run the sheep first because our horses are still fat, because there's so much grass left over, because we're not at our actual capacity yet, which makes it to where there's a lot of grass left over that shouldn't be. And the fact that they eat the weeds first. We would like to run some feeder calves between them. So basically run the sheep, then run the feeder calves, and then run the horses. We like that idea for a few reasons. One, we'd like to have our own hamburger and have, you know, it raised on our own farm. It's great that we can get it from a neighbor though, and we do appreciate that right now. The other reason is because the more that this is getting eaten down and the more varieties of manure being put back on, the better the actual ground composition or the dirt composition is going to become. It also makes it to where the brush hogging potential is almost none at that point, because if everything's kind of being eaten, you know, not like all the way to the dirt, hopefully like the horses do, but the sheep, you know, eat down to, you know, 4 or 5 inches, and then the cattle come by and they'll eat down a little farther. The beauty of it is that the parasites that bug the sheep won't bug the cattle. The parasites that bug the cattle won't bug the horses. The parasites that bug the horses won't bug the sheep. So it's kind of a vicious cycle in that aspect, that they're all kind of eating the parasites that don't hurt each other and ridding them for the next species. We will have more on that as that develops, but right now our primary goal is to get the sheep taken care of, and then we'll consider the calves. The other downside to calves is we don't even have our working facility set up for the sheep yet, because we do intend to build 2 more barns and make a horseshoe area between those barns essentially, and that's where our working arena is going to be. Or yeah, you'll see that on other videos. Anyhow, I hope this was very informative, and I hope it was helpful for you. The questions, obviously, if you have any, just put them in the comments, and if there's something that is big enough or broad enough that we need to put a video out for it, we will. If it's something we can answer here or even refer you to another video we've made, we will do that as well. So thank you. We appreciate you watching. Have a blessed week, and we'll see you next time.